Oh, is that what you did? Can you take a picture of that and send it to Canvas? I left the assignment open. So if you haven't done the assignment yet, you want to do it, you can still do it. I left it open for a couple of days, but I made it due last night because I wanted you to do the reading. So, okay, so just take a picture of that. Turn it. Good? Good? Good. All right, so yesterday, like I said, as you read these three political philosophers, Locke, or Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, okay, and they're actually in the order of chronologically of the dates when they were written. So Hobbes wrote his theory earlier than the others, and Rousseau was the last of the three. Okay, so let's dig into this a little bit. Let's talk about what we read. Looking at John Hobbes, he's English, right? So he's living under the divine right. Yes, an absolute monarch. Okay, and he decides to, philosophize about changing the way things are done for human beings. And that quote at the top, where it says, life in a state of nature would be nasty, brutish, and short. Okay, so let's talk about this state of nature stuff, right? They all talk about state of nature. Yes? But what in the world do they mean by the state of nature? Anarchy? Okay, so no civil society, no government is a state of nature. Anybody have like a slightly different view than that, or? I like to think of it like the law of the jungle, right? Who's the king of the jungle? Which is what? Yeah, the lion doesn't live in the jungle. Well, the lion lives on the savannah, yeah. But a tiger lives in the jungle, yes? So that would really be the king of the jungle, yes? Okay. But, guys, without anybody to control the jungle, it's every animal for themselves, yes? Survival of the fittest, okay? That's kind of how I view the state of nature, okay? It's just like, it's a blank slate where, human beings, animal kingdom, all interact together, and it's about survival, okay? So, left to our own devices in a complete state of nature, what happens, according to Hobbes, if there's no government? Life is nasty, brutish, and short, yes? Okay, because of human nature. So how does Hobbes describe man? Humans. Okay, self-interested, subjective, and rational. Okay, that last part's very important, guys. The rational. Let's start with subjective. So I imagine at some point in your religion classes, guys, you talked about the difference between subjective truth and objective truth, yes? Today we use a term called moral what? Moral relativism. Yeah. So if it feels good to us by our nature, if we're mechanical and we react to stimuli, so if that stimuli feels good, then it's okay. Right? In the view of somebody that believes subjectively, would you say that most atheists believe in subjective truth? Well, this involves science, right? Well, look how this is described in here. Let's see, third paragraph, which is the big one in the middle. Okay? They search for the best way to achieve their needs and desires. Search for the best way for your needs according to the stimuli that you feel living in a state of nature. So it's just responsive. The truth is what we make it. What we feel, right? Is that okay? Now, so he recognizes that man can be bad. Yes, man can be evil. Okay. So the rational part comes in here, that we need somebody to control us. Yes? Yeah. And what kind of government does he say should do that? An absolute monarch. Now, is that a divine right monarchy or just an absolute monarchy? Doesn't really say, but it does fly in the face of the divine right. This is because it talks about how he flees Britain. Okay, at the top. Okay, he says. But
it kind of sounds like he's advocating.
Well, yes, but there's a difference between God giving the monarch a right and the people giving the monarch a right. So that's the social contract, is that we choose. Okay, this is a choice. Human beings, if they are truly, there is no objective truth, there's only subjective truth. Human beings are given a choice of what type of government to live under. That's the social contract. We get to choose. It's an agreement between us and whoever's going to rule over us. The rational choice, in Hobbes' view, is a very strong, absolute, powerful government that can control the destructive, combative, self-interested ways of you and I. Do we have murder in this country? Is it rampant? There was a freaking beheading in Southern California today. In the daylight, out in the open. A guy used a sword to cut off a mother's head, a mother of two people, this morning in Southern California. You've heard about some of these cases, like in Tennessee. There's been 2 this week in Memphis. This guy gets let out of jail early. He's got like a 30-year sentence. They let him out early. It didn't take him more than 2 days till he abducted, raped, and murdered. Okay? Hobbes has a point. His most famous work is called the Leviathan. Have you heard that word before? Where's that word found? Huh?
The first monster.
It's in the Bible. Yeah, it's like this sea monster, this Leviathan. Okay? Guys, this is a term that's often used in political science. The Leviathan is the government. It's all powerful, all controlling. Okay? And that's what Hobbes is really calling for, because he doesn't trust human beings. And we shouldn't trust each other because we're only self-interested mechanical creatures reacting to stimuli where there's no truth. Only what we make it. So, we're going to come back to Hobbes, okay, after we talk about Locke and do a little bit of comparison. Now, on the test, guys, you are going to be comparing Hobbes and Locke. Keep Rousseau and his ideas out of that discussion at that point. Okay. Although Rousseau is important. All right, so let's look at John Locke. Okay. He's writing a bit later, still living under the monarch. Okay. The divine right monarch. Okay, he does a lot of stuff in monetary policy, economics, and so forth. But he dabbles over here in kind of political philosophy and so forth. And so his second treatise on civil government, his most famous work, outlines the ideas about liberal government. Okay, now the term liberal, as we just studied it with the political spectrum, is different than what's called classical liberalism. The founding fathers of this country, guys, were all classic liberals. What's the root of the word liberal? Liberty, freedom. Okay, so in a classical liberal way of thinking is that people should have freedom. Okay. Now, Locke, would you say he has a more optimistic or pessimistic view of man? A little more optimistic, wouldn't you say? Okay. Although Hobbes brings up some good points about how we can behave. We see it every day. Okay. What prevents you guys from acting and going out and killing somebody, or killing somebody right now in this room?
That's the only reason, John.
What prevents you from doing that? All right, we'll come back to that. Well, you already said something I didn't want to hear. Okay. Now, so he believes in a social contract theory, but he has a different view of natural law and the state of nature. Okay. This is, I think, a very important line in here. It's in the middle of that middle paragraph, the big one in the middle. Halfway down, he says the state of nature is pre-political, but not pre-moral. So the state of nature, the jungle, right, doesn't have a government, but it is moral. Morality predates it. State of nature. What does that mean? We have natural law, like human beings. What does that mean? Okay, so there's a pre-right or wrong. Yeah. There's a pre-good and evil. Where does that come from? Where does that come from? God. The existence of God. Yes? Okay, so God created nature. When he created nature, it was good, it was moral. And then humans corrupted that, yes? Adam and Eve? I don't know whether you guys believe in a literal Adam and Eve or not. The church allows you to choose that, I believe. Am I right there? Okay. No? No?
Oh wait, no, there's a literal Adam and Eve.
There is?
It's like their bodies could have evolved from like existing organisms. It's like the apes. But like there is like a first human, a first male, and a first woman.
Okay.
Did the first
Okay. All right. I got you. All right. Now, I don't believe that. I don't believe that we came from apes. But I do believe in a literal Adam and Eve. With me on that? Okay. But you guys can choose whichever, right? Yes. But there is an Adam and Eve. Okay. Now, yeah, I mean, we all know the story. Okay. Now, Locke says that this morality comes from God, okay, and it prevents us from harming others. Yet we still harm each other, yes, because we were born good, but we have the stain of sin, yes. Okay. Now, how do you know? How do you know when you're doing something good or something evil? You get this feeling? What do we call that? Oh, your conscience. Now, you guys have all taken biology, right? Is there somewhere in the body where you can like point to that that conscience and say, this is where the conscience is? Is there a part of the brain that you can specifically point to? We know there's different parts of the brains where different, parts of the brain are triggered during different situations. Okay, so we call this a conscience. Where did we get the conscience? From God. Do dogs have conscience? You sure? Have you seen those videos? Like when people come home, the dog's chewed up a bunch of stuff, and the dogs know they're guilty, right? And they're cowering in the corner because they know they did something wrong. So we're saying that is a learned behavior, not innate. But our conscious, our objective truth is innate. Is that what's going on here? Just trying to reaffirm some learning here. Yes? We're born with that. Now we also learn, right? We're taught by our parents. Some of us are spanked as children. God says, don't spare the rod. Huh? Yeah, it's in the Bible, right? Don't spare the rod, the switch, the belt. The what? The spatula, the wooden spoon. Right? Were all of you guys spanked? You were never spanked? Yeah. You never did anything wrong? You spanked a lot?
Yeah. I got hit by my grandpa a lot too.
Yeah. I can see that. I believe that. Okay. All right. So where am I going with this? Objective truth. Okay. And we still have this, right? But objective truth, there is a right, there is a wrong. Okay? And you know it when you do it, right? You know it. Now, I was just talking about atheists, Poji. So if an atheist doesn't believe that there is morality given to us by God, an atheist believes that morality is what we think is right and wrong, based on reality around us. Okay? It's learned. Well, how do you know what is truly right and what is wrong if you're subjective? So I was reading, I like to read. Sometimes I finish a book and I don't have anything to read. My wife reads a lot, and she reads a lot of religious books. And so one day I pull this book off the shelf. It's called Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. Familiar? Have any of you guys read this? Now, I start reading this book, and a lot of it's like, you know what this means. Like some of you guys reading that Locke last night. Right? Okay? Yeah, I'm like, it's kind of blowing me away. But C.S. Lewis, a lot of the stuff he wrote was actually given in like a talk over the radio. And then they just wrote down what he said in these interviews and stuff. But anyhow, he talks about how to convince an atheist that there's a God. Okay? So you meet an atheist. Let's say, Poji, you're an atheist. Okay? And I say something that's really insulting to you. Okay? And it hurts your feelings. And you say to me, you know, Mr. Ebright, that wasn't very nice. I think that was wrong. You shouldn't have said that. And then I just simply ask you, well, why is it wrong?
Because it goes
Against what? Oh, a social code. Where does that come from? Oh, well, my social code says it's perfectly fine to insult you. No, No, I'm part of the society as a whole. John's going to join in with me and start bashing on you as well. We might even make you cry. And that doesn't matter to me because it feels good to me to do it. So it's right. Where do we learn this? We have this conscious, guys. It's not a learned behavior. It's something that's innate in us. We know. Okay? Locke believed in God. Okay? Now, let me just, a few years ago, when I got married, I married a Methodist. Okay? I don't know if I told you this. Okay? She's a cradle Methodist. We go to the Methodist church, and we join a Sunday school class called Bible 101. So we get together with these other adults, and we take one book of the Bible, say Mark, and we get these little workbooks, and we study the book of Mark. And then we go on and do another book after we finish that, okay? Through the Bible, 101, okay? Learning the Bible. And then we did this for like 2 years. And then somebody said, why don't we try something else? And like, yeah, well, what do we got? Well, why don't we like study the, faith of, the founding of the country, like the impact of religion on the founding of the United States. Well, everybody said, yeah, that's kind of a good idea. And then they all looked at me. And I said, well, you're the government teacher. So I went and tried to find a good book that we could study. And I found this book. Okay? It's called The Faith of the Founding Fathers. Okay? Christianity and the Constitution. Okay? Now, are we a Christian nation? We are not a Christian nation. We are a secular nation. Our laws are not based off the Bible. If the laws were based off the Bible, adultery would be a crime. Is adultery a crime in this country? No, it is not. Okay? Now, do Christian beliefs and the Bible impact people that make the laws? Yes. Especially if the ones making the laws are Christians. Yes? And were all of the founders of the United States Christians? No. Some of them were. Many of them were. You shook your head no. Jefferson certainly understood Christianity very well. I would say he believed in God, but not so much as Jesus Christ and the Trinity. Along with him, Benjamin Franklin, similarly. They're what you would refer to as deists. Okay? John Adams was a Christian. James Madison was a Christian. George Washington was a Christian. Now, these men that I just mentioned, especially Jefferson, studied Locke. So what this book does, which is pretty cool, okay, the Declaration of Independence was written in 1776, right? So when you guys write a paper for me, if you use a source for the information for your paper, you're supposed to do what? You're supposed to cite that information. So when the founders wrote, they cited where they got their information. So you can go back and research where the founders got a lot of their influences. And so the author of this book looks at the most cited thinkers by decade, okay, in the United States. So in the 1760s, okay, the most cited thinker was John Locke. The 1760s of that revolutionary era, or leading up to the revolutionary era, in places like Boston, Massachusetts. Okay? In the 1770s, when they wrote the Declaration, the top two cited thinkers, were Locke and Montesquieu. When you move to the 1790s, when we write and rewrite our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, the number one cited thinker is a guy named Blackstone. Now, are any of you guys thinking about studying law? Okay. Blackstone is pretty much the author of English common law. So you go to law school, you read Blackstone because English common law affected our laws here. Okay, the English, obviously these were the English colonies, so they're going to have a huge impact. Okay. Then you go further, digging into this. Okay. Most cited thinkers from 1716 to 1805, Locke is third. Okay. And then you look at distribution of citations by classification. So in the 1760s, you're looking at authors, the Enlightenment is number one, which these are enlightened ideas that we're reading about. Number two is the Bible. That is cited. Okay. In the 1770s, the Bible is the number one cited source between Enlightenment, common law, Whig, classical literature, okay, or peers, people they know each other, okay. So the Bible had a pretty big influence. And then this guy goes in, this author goes in and looks at each of these founders and looks at their faith, their religion, okay, like their training, like what they study, all this sort of thing. And so Locke had a profound impact here. Okay, Locke talks about natural law and natural rights. These natural rights that Locke lists are what? Life, liberty, and property. Yes. Now, you saw that little blurb in there about the land, property with the Indians, Native Americans, that they did not use the natural resources of the land itself, so therefore it could be taken away from them. It was not their property. So if you mix labor with the soil, you can own that property. Okay? Locke, if you go back and look where he gets this idea, it's actually from Genesis. Okay, so when God created the earth, he gave it to who? Adam and Eve. Well, Adam and then Eve. Okay, and then he destroyed the earth. With a what? With a big flood. And he gave the earth to who? Noah. This is where Locke is getting these ideas. It's from Genesis. Okay, that people can own property, that can possess it. Okay. Now, what happens if a government does not secure these natural rights? Is the right of the people to alter or what? Overthrow. To overthrow the government. Now, Locke is writing this while he's living under the divine right of kings. This is why he doesn't publish it for 10 years after he writes it, because he's afraid for his life. This is treason. You understand? Treason. Now, do me a favor and flip to page. Where you at? Here. Here we go. Page 30. Who wrote this document? Thomas Jefferson. There were 5 men on the Declaration Committee. Jefferson. Who? Franklin. John Adams. Livingston and Sherman. Okay? 5 men on the committee. Jefferson, who has written a lot for his home state of Virginia, and a lot on human nature and law. They convince him to write this. Okay? He doesn't want to write it, but Adams forces him to, basically. Okay? Now, Adams could have written this. Franklin could have written this, but nobody had a way with words like Jefferson. Okay? So let me drop down to the second paragraph. Listen to these words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. What kind of rights? Where do we get those rights? Oh, wait a second. Hey, so when we write a constitution and a Bill of Rights, and we put our rights in there, some of those rights are given to us by God, not by man. Guys, if rights are given to you by man, can they be taken away? Yes. If rights are given to you by God, can they be taken away? No. Those are natural. We are born with them, ladies and gentlemen. This is so freaking important. Because there's a lot of people in this country that don't believe in God. If you don't believe in God, you don't believe that these natural rights were given to you from God, which means government can take them away from you. Especially if you behave badly or in a way that they don't like. Not even necessarily be badly, just not the way the government wants you to. You following me on this? So, we're born endowed with certain unalienable rights, which among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, government are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. This is the social contract. That whenever a form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and institute new government, laying in its foundations on such principles, organized powers in such form as to them so seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Did Jefferson plagiarize from Locke here? No. But did he get his ideas from Locke? In many ways, yes. Okay, this is why we're studying John Locke. Okay, now let me go back to Hobbes for a second. As I just mentioned to you, fewer and fewer Americans believe in God. James Madison, who wrote our Constitution, he's the father of the Constitution. James Madison said this form of government will only work for a moral people. So as fewer and fewer people believe in objective truth, but subjective truth, and don't believe in God, what happens to our behavior? What's stopping you from hurting somebody in this classroom right now? Truth. It's wrong. Maybe Hobbes is right. We get further and further away from God. We get further and further away from truth. We are going to need more and stronger government to control us. Do you not see that? You see what I'm saying? This is big. Now, guys, Mr. O'Connor over at Northwest High School cannot give this same lecture that I just gave. He's not allowed to. Way too much God in this. Way too much truth in this lecture. So if the majority of our students go to school in public schools in this country and don't learn the truth about our government and where it comes from and where our rights come from, you guys are going to have to hold up the mantle. No pressure. But there are people in Congress that do not believe in God. There are people on CNN and MSNBC. You turn on the freaking news, guys. They don't believe that you have natural rights given to you from God. They think that the government is what gets to decide what your rights are. No. And guys, as far as pursuing happiness, Every time the government creates a regulation, puts a roadblock in your way to pursue what you want in life, they're being destructive of those ends. Now, guys, we can alter our government this November. We all have a say. We don't have to abolish the government. We can alter it through peaceful means. You with me? Now, if it ever becomes so destructive of these ends, we have a right, if not an obligation, to overthrow the government. Which is why they put the Second Amendment in. Right, Racine? Okay. So, what else with Hobbes? Or excuse me, with Locke. But I just know, really, guys, as we become more immoral as a nation, government is going to have to become stronger, more powerful to control us, because we don't know how to control ourselves. You and I do. I think. Right? Is that too deep? All right. Now, what form of government would work best in the view of Locke? Democracy. As you study a little bit more in depth, it's representative government or Republican government. Okay, because they make reference to this in the next one with Rousseau, where he believes in direct democracy and Locke believed in representative democracy. Okay. So, okay, feel like you can compare those two on a test? May have to review that a little bit before the test, okay? All right, let's jump over to Rousseau. How much time do I have? 5 minutes. Okay. Theory on a state of nature. Believe that there's a historical development of the state of nature, so it's always changing. Originally, it was peaceful and free because of abundance of nature and the small size of the population. Once societies in leisure time began, people began to compare themselves, resulting in shame, envy, pride, and contempt for one another. More importantly, with the creation of private property, society turned to greed, competition, inequality, and social classes. Private property is what led people out of the state of nature. Okay. Now, his stuff on education is pretty good. We talked about things like learning things by actually doing them instead of learning them out of a book, but actually participating in the learning actively with your body. Helps people learn. Some people learn better. That certainly is a thing. So he's got some interesting thoughts. Now, he argues that government is established through a social contract, which ostensibly was to protect the rights of everyone, as Locke said. But it was really set up by the powerful to ensure their continued dominance of private property and therefore society. What was that? Did you call him a commie? Is that what you said? No, it's okay. No, I mean, literally, if you read Rousseau, you might think that Rousseau studied somebody named Marx, or Marx may have studied somebody named Rousseau. It's what Latin. Marx did read Rousseau. Marx did cite Rousseau. Okay, this idea of the general will. Okay, let's get into that. Okay, you enter into new social contract. Legitimate sovereignty is derived from everyone's submission to a general will. That's 51%. Okay, and while such obedience may not be in everyone's personal interest, it is indeed what they really want, even if they don't realize it. Really? They may need to be forced to be free. He argued this could only be done through a direct democracy where every person takes part in the decisions of government, constantly reinforcing the social contract. He did not think that representative democracy, where which people elect representatives to vote for them, was strong enough system to save us from the harms of private property. This is what inspired the French Revolution. The mob. You guys studied the French Revolution? It's bloody, yes? The general will was that we needed to tear down the aristocracy and institute direct democracy, yes? Which creates human beings, guys. When we get emotional, when we get fired up, we get mad, turn into a what? A mob. 51% of us can destroy the other 49%. This is the French Revolution. Okay? Now, our founders feared this. Many of our founders referred to the direct democracy as mobocracy. Okay? The French went off the rails. We just wanted to get rid of the British and make our own decisions. They went off the rails. Okay? Man was born free. He is everywhere in chains. So, a little bit of a radical. Would you say? Yes, Marx. Yeah, Karl Marx did study Hobbes, or excuse me, Rousseau. Okay, because you can see it in there, gang. That general will thing is big for communists. Okay, for Marxists. The 51%. Most decisions in our country are made by the majority, but they're made by the majority of elected representatives, not by the people. Now, we got to vote this last primary election on yes or no, right? That decision was made by the majority in a democratic process, not through elected representatives. Occasionally, we get to do that. It's usually called a referendum, where you get to vote. Everybody gets to vote on that issue. Okay. They do this in California a lot. Referendum. And then the people pass it, and then the judges overturn it. Okay.